Dude, I am incredibly excited to connect with you, man. It's been a long time since you and I have had a chance to chat. And, I think both of us went back and forth. We've been going back and forth for a month trying to find a date that both of us worked, and you were sick, and then this happened. But I'm glad that we finally have a chance to connect and chat because, I love what I see you're doing. You're just continuing to grow. And obviously it's been a while now that you've been with Sitkins and growing and, really, becoming, if not, you are the face of that group and all the work you've done. It's incredible to see. And I'm so happy for it. And I just want to chat about what you're seeing in the market. You're in a unique place here. And I'm interested in your perspective.
Yeah, same way. It's always interesting because I always forget how, I don't want to do the whole, how fast time goes and all that, but I certainly stay in touch and watch your stuff and love what you're doing as well, and authenticity and different things. And there's a lot going on in the world in general, but I love where you're going and what you're doing. And at the same time, it's just like one of those things where you look back and you're like, man, we used to think we were the young guys out there. And you very quickly are like, am I sounding like the old guy now?
Yeah.
Like, oh, you whippersnappers. You don't understand how it really goes out there, right? So it happens fast.
It wasn't that long ago that was the case. When do we first connect? 2010? Probably 2010, 2011, somewhere in there, maybe,
Yep.
And, so that's 14 years ago, which is a crazy amount of time to think about. I've been to like 7 different companies. You've been through 3, right? Yep. When you were producing, and then you started your own consultancy, and then you moved over to Sitkins, which is awesome. And yes, it is funny. And I will say that I don't feel like the young guy on the streets anymore. You know what I mean? It doesn't, I don't mean that like, I feel old. I certainly don't feel old. I feel good. I think I've kept myself healthy. I feel like I stay on top of things and feel innovative. However, there is definitely that late 20s, early to mid 30s juice that you have where it's like, you just feel like you could run through a brick wall and no one's opinion matters and everything and everyone older than you is stupid. Like I definitely have matured out of that phase of my career and have much more respect for probably the broader industry as a whole, the challenges everyone faces, more perspective. I think all the things that come with time, I guess.
Yeah, that's just the way it goes. Interesting. I heard this. This is from even an older perspective, but I think it's true. Maybe you relate to this, but like the older I get, this is what I heard. The older I get, the more I know that I don't know. Meaning that there's just because you're more aware that this could change, or I don't have a full grasp of this. But he said the more that I do know, the more that I do know, it's less, but I know it with more conviction, right? Because it's this idea that, maybe, and again, just to stereotype ages, maybe in their 20s, it's like, this and that and everything and all this. And you've got the gusto and the passion. And here I am now, I'm 46, just turned 46, which is like, 40 wasn't a big deal to me. Getting close to 50 is kind of weird, at least for me. I'm like, that can't be right. But the things that I'm less brash maybe and like, oh, I heard this one thing, you got to do it, because I think there's more of an evolution. But I also have a lot more, just like you do, Ryan, of track record and history and experience, and I've lived it and seen it, I've had multiple conversations. And this one thing, I really know. And because it's not just an idea that popped in my head one day. So I don't know if you relate to that or not, but I think it's critical.
I completely do. There's another thing too, to the knowing, there's a lot that you don't know, is also there's a lot that I don't care to ever know. Right? Like there's like stuff now that I just don't care to know about. It's just, and not that I don't think it's important, just simply there's only so much you can learn and really master and own. And I think in general, I find myself to be the type of person who I like to learn things all the time and all different kinds of stuff. And one thing I've had to throttle a little bit in order to become just more of a master at the things that I want to be good at and where I can be good at is I've had to take certain items and just be like, I'm at this point, at this season in my life, I do not have the time nor the ability to be good or learn that thing. I have to leave that to someone else and focus on the things that I can be really good at. And that wasn't an easy transition for me, because when I was younger, it was like, give me all the knowledge. I want to know everything, and I want to know every aspect of the business. And, you know, I'll tell you, let me give you a good example. One of the areas that I have given up on is knowing the technical side of technology. I just don't care. I don't. And not that I don't think it's important. I think it's highly important, right? I think it's very, very important. But what I've learned, and I think this is something that I think this comes with age and experience and maturity, is like, I'm now willing to outsource that to people that I trust. So now I have a dozen or so people that really know the technical side of our industry well. And if I have a question about that side, I just call them. So I'm not going to learn it. I don't care to learn it. I know just enough to be dangerous. But now I can call them and be like, yo, what's up? What's really going on with, generative AI? Or what's really going on with APIs or data lakes? Like, I had a really good discussion on an episode that it actually just went live the week that we're recording this, with Peter McDonald, the founder of Wonderwrite.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome dude. I think he's one of the smartest guys in the space. And we were talking about data lakes, right? And that's one of those things where, like, you hear people talk about data lakes and data warehouses and blah, blah, blah. And I'm just, we kind of said to him, like, what's the deal? Like, are these important? Is this something we should be thinking about? Do we need to care? Like, if a carrier or a vendor comes out with, hey, we got a new data lake, is that something I should be excited about? Should I not give a shit about? You know what I mean? Like, those are the kind of things that I just have stopped really trying to go deep on, because I'm never going to be a technical expert. So I don't know. Have you found that? Are there things, what's something that you've done that for? Like, is there something that you kind of outsource now?
Well, but there's a number of things, right? I mean, it goes all the way from professional and personal. I'll start with the personal, which is kind of funny, but I mean, like, and maybe this is me, but like, you're a guy and you're starting a family, and it's like, I should know how to do some of this. Like, I should be able to put a storm door on my house. I don't know. I'm just like, oh yeah, I never learned. I don't care. I don't want to know. But early, like, well, I have to try. And the silly example of this is, you spend all day Saturday doing something that would take someone else 30 minutes. And 2 years later, the door doesn't open right.
Yeah.
Right? Like, so like, from a personal level, you're like, why am I worried about this? From a professional level, there's so many examples.
Yes.
I know you've, I think you've talked about it, read the 10X is easier than 2X.
Yes. Yep.
Right. Which obviously goes into so many of these concepts of understanding unique ability and your top 20%. And I've been through the strategic coach program, and it's one of those things, I think you hear it a few times, but it takes a while to go, oh, now I get it.
Yeah.
Like, I don't have a passion for this. I'm not good at it. But when I really tap into where I go, this is where the experience thing, it takes a while to discover who you really are and what you love. I mean, like, it really is like, what is it that I tap into, that when I wake up in the morning, like, I don't want to get the whole passion thing, because there's a lot of things to do, but it's like, I'm excited to learn. I want to go deeper in this. Like, I really want to. So, I mean, professionally for me, here's an example. Like, I'm pretty good and love to communicate and speak, and be able to take concepts to our members and professionals and make them understandable, relatable, and help them do things behavior wise. Like, I love putting those pieces together where maybe they haven't got clicks before, and boom, now I got it. Like, so when I'm doing that stuff, like, I'm putting rocket fuel in the engine, right? Like, this, we got it. But I mean, I've got a full-time executive assistant, which years ago you'd be like, well, I can do this, I can do that. No, like, it's just a different world. So I don't know. I mean, the example I think of this too, maybe this isn't good in a political environment. I'm not going political, but like, a great president, in my opinion, any generation, like, I don't have to know everything. I have to surround myself with really talented people and smart people and people I trust in key areas to do exactly what you said. Tell me about this thing. What do I need to know? Because I got to make a decision that's going to impact a lot of people.
Yeah.
And I don't have time to know all the ins and outs. I just need to know what it means.
I'll tell you what, I was a huge fan of Vivek Ramaswamy.
Mhm.
And he said some things that whatever, but to be honest with you, I think it is a sign of a lack of intelligence or intellectual honesty when people act because somebody says one thing they don't agree with, that they can't agree with everything he says
Right.
or like him. Right. And that goes for everybody. I mean, there's, there's another politician, Dean Phillips on the Democrat side, who's running against Joe Biden. And, there's some things he said that I think are freaking brilliant. And I'm not a Democrat. I don't tend to agree with too much that goes on that side. However, I think he's a really smart guy.
Mhm.
He's also got Trump derangement syndrome hardcore. I don't agree with that at all. But
Yeah.
it's like, geez, I can still like the guy and like that aspect of him. But we've gotten to this point with everybody, with celebrities, with thought leaders, with politicians, even with people in our life, our friends. I feel like there's this cultural idea that's been created around like, I can agree with everything except for one thing, but if I disagree with one thing, then you're a moron and I can't like you. And it's like, guys, in general, from everybody, whether it's some, Silicon Valley, Stanford graduate dick who comes in and tells us that we have no idea what we're doing, like, in the independent insurance agency space, like maybe we hate that aspect of them, but are there realities to some of the things they're seeing that we can learn from? I mean, that's one of the things that I always said about, Lemonade. She's like, I almost forgot them. Was like, yes, I couldn't stand the way that guy spoke about our industry and about the professionals and, literally us as people. We talk very much very poorly about us. However, there were some things that he said and some ways that he built his product that I thought, geez, we can't discount what he's saying. Like, yes, do I wish that, someone would put him in his place in terms of, who we are as professionals and what we've done for the last 400 years in essentially building the bedrock of the capitalistic society. But geez, man, his thoughts on UX and customer experience, we should really learn from them. And, I think I do wish for our society in general across the board, not just thinking about politicians, that we could be better at cherry picking the things that are really valuable and not just focus on the things that we necessarily disagree with, because a lot of people we disagree with have really good ideas that we can learn from.
Yeah, 100% agree. And I know for human behavior, it can be a challenge because especially if it's certain things that really are like, points of contention, right? But you're 100% right. And I mean, again, I have no doubt, and we haven't talked about this, but like there are things that you have probably said over the past 5 years. I go, I don't know about that. And I'm sure there's things that I've said, you'd be like, I don't know about that. Right. Like, and by the way, this is why, and I appreciate, I see some of these things too, where like you'll put stuff out there and people will challenge it and you go, let's talk about it. Because that's solid discourse. Like, and that's important because you're exactly right. Like 9 out of 10 things could be really useful and helpful and valuable to me or organization in some way. But because of the one thing, I'm shutting you out.
Yeah.
Like, well, that's a pretty stupid mindset.
Yeah, I agree.
Frankly.
I agree. It's funny. My coaching program or consultancy or whatever you want to call it, I'm not sure how to properly frame what I'm doing yet, but it's launched focus is going to be on the inbound side of the business. That's what I do best. I'm not, I can speak on all the other aspects of running an agency, but the part that I think I know better than anybody is inbound, is how to build a foundational structure around the inbound side of your marketing and sales program. And I posted recently a little clip from a solo show that I did, which you can listen to the full thing in the podcast somewhere. I'm not exactly sure which episode it was, but around how I believe when it comes to inbound specifically, just inbound, we're not talking about outbound, we're not talking about necessarily even referrals. When it comes to someone who has filled out a form or calls your agency cold, right? You don't know them. They've watched your content or whatever, that when that person reaches out to you, your primary objective is to solve the problem with which they call, not to round out their account, not to do some huge deep dive on all the other things you could possibly sell them, not to pontificate about why your agency is the best and your experience and legacy and tool. It is just to solve their problem. Then you come back around and you do all the things you need to do to make them, to maximize the lifetime value of that client. But that was essentially what I said. And man, did I get some pushback on that particular issue, right? Everyone's like, rah, rah. And this is what I love. And I love this because I view this partially as, I think it's a legacy mindset, and partially I think it's ego. And I'm sure some of it is also based on results, but I see the first two. I want to make sure that when people push back on me on this particular viewpoint, and I want your take on this, I'm just setting it up for you, but I want to make sure that when you push back on me on this particular issue, that it is not reasons 1 or 2, that it's reason 3. If it's reason 3, right, that you have found that with the highest conversion rate, the highest retention rate, and the largest lifetime value is based on going through an hour-long sales process when someone calls in cold, then I will take that as feedback. But if what you're saying is we're risk managers, or we're value creators, or we're relationship-based, and that's why you're doing it, that's your fucking ego. That is not real. Because there is nobody in this space that I would love to have someone come at me who has as much inbound experience as I have in terms of taking calls, listening to calls, coaching people on inbound. I don't think there's anybody else in this space that has as much experience as I do. So with that said, what is your take on this, and how do you approach it? If you were coaching somebody, how would you approach this? Like, how would you talk them through this? Where do you stand on this particular issue?
My first response, I have to go and watch and see the comments, because I don't have the full context.
Yeah.
So I don't say it to protect myself, but I just say it because I really don't know.
Nope.
But I think here's where I'm at, like, on this. And again, I just from what I know and what you said there, which is probably a small sample size of stuff. Here's what I know. This is an example we talked about earlier. I know that I'm not a inbound specialist. So my first response is if I've taken more reps than you in this area, maybe we can have dialogue, and maybe I can really tell you, I think this is what I think. Otherwise, I'm talking with just, I don't know, philosophies that seem right, but I haven't lived out. So my first step is I wouldn't challenge you there on that, because I don't know enough to challenge you. Other things I might, but that one I wouldn't, right? Yeah. Here's the other thing. I would just say overall of this, and again, this maybe is just an approach in sales, but to me, again, we've talked about this before. I mean, this isn't new to you. Like, selling it's just to transfer an idea of a concept. It's moving something along. And so all I wrote down as you said that is, I think there is similarities, even if I was having a sit down meeting with someone who didn't know me, is I'm not trying to sell the whole thing. I'm trying to sell the next thing. And what I mean by that, I guess if I'm relating to what you're saying, Ryan, is if there is a problem, that's the next thing. That's where they're at. And the other part about it is people don't buy or care about you. They buy and care for them. So I would certainly agree with you in the fact that if I came in and be like, this is my issue, this is my issue, this is my issue, and you kept talking about something else, I would be annoyed pretty quickly. Right? Yeah. So I don't know if that goes along with what you're saying, but my biggest thing is after this today, I'm going to go watch your video and then I'll give you more context. How's that?
Yeah. Yeah. And it's funny. I'm cherry picking one thing that I've said, because 1, I know that I'm right. And 2, that, I was surprised at how much pushback I got. People are like, oh, when someone calls, So I thought the interesting part about it was the mindset that solving the problem they had. So there was a couple interesting. So here was the major pushbacks, right? And again, I'm just talking through this as a way to think through any problem, because I love your thoughts, right? Sell the next thing. I think that's a really interesting way to think through it. And I'm going to have to put some thought into that saying, because I like that quite a bit. So one of the pieces of pushback I got was, monoline clients are less profitable. Okay.
Mhm.
So fair and statistically accurate and 100% agree unless you are a covered specialist, right? Like, let's say you're a workers' comp specialist, et cetera. That would be the exception. I'm not taking that exception. I'm saying I agree that monoline clients tend to be less profitable and retain at a lower level. However, what I think is interesting, and again, this is why I love attacking the first two reasons, traditional legacy thinking and or ego, and not real results. Because real results would tell you, yes, if you only solve their immediate problem and never cross-sell, upsell, et cetera, then these individuals are 100% right that based on real results and statistics, that monoline account is going to be less profitable and not retain, and what they're saying is accurate. However, they're operating under the assumption that you don't have a system or process in place through either onboarding or through your retention team to make sure that account is properly rounded out, that you're asking for reviews, for referrals, et cetera, and all the other things that could possibly come with it, which has to be part of the process. So that's the one pushback. The other pushback is that somehow, and this speaks to legacy thought process that my core, I cannot help but fight. I've been fighting it since basically the day I joined this industry, is that somehow only solving their immediate problem is not being a true trusted advisor or risk manager. And to that is the one. So the first one I can understand, and I certainly can listen to. You are somehow not doing your job properly, or you're not of a quality, right? There's this aristocracy to the way that these comments come across of look at me, I'm a trusted advisor because I round out accounts, or we use education or whatever the fuck, I'm yeah, but that's you. That's ego talking, in my opinion. That's not a customer. And this is where I feel like our industry, and this is where I'm really interested in your take on this. I feel like we don't put ourselves in the customer experience enough when we think through how we operate. I feel like we think about how we like to provide our product to our customers, right? What's my preferred way of helping Brent and his family or his company, et cetera. But what we don't think through is, what if I were Brent coming to my agency, right? Because I just feel like a lot of the way we position our business is how we like to do business. And we do not think through how our customers want to be served, if that makes sense. One, do you agree with that? And two, how do you address that with people? How do you think you start to help people better understand the experience that they're providing, not just what they want to do? And do you even think that's important?
I think you asked me 7 questions.
I did. Yeah. Pick whichever one you want. I'm not very good at it. Even though I've been doing this for a long time, Brent, I'm still not very good at it.
I'm just giving you a hard time. But there's a lot there. So, and I was trying to think of how to unpack some of that, because I think in most ways, I understand and hear your frustrations and agree with your process. And then I guess I've got some sub points in my mind here.
Yes, please.
So to me, let me start off with this. And we talk so often about what is your business model, because to me, it all comes back to your philosophy and your model. So first of all, my answer of should you do this or this? Well, I would say, well, it depends. What do you want your business model to be? What does it look like? I think that's where I think sometimes people get in a little bit of trouble, because I think there's just this one way. Well, you work with independent insurance agencies. You've been part of that. We know how many thousands there are. I was to an independent insurance agency. The best thing is that you're independent. Do what you want. The hardest thing is you're independent. You can do what you want. But that's the crux, right? So now how do we put this together? Well, I think going back to your question of and your two points, to me, I go back to sell the next thing. What is the purpose of this conversation? Where are we at? And whether it's an inbound or if I was having an initial meeting, now maybe there was more qualification up front, but you're talking about inbound, that's different. But just if I'm having an initial conversation, the first question is, okay, is this the right person to be talking to? Well, inbound, maybe you don't have as much control of that to some degree, right? Depending on what they read or saw.
It's very true.
here's some stuff that we start off with. Like if I was having a conversation, hey, Ryan, what's frustrating you the most right now?
Yeah.
That has nothing to do with my business model. That's me just getting to know you as a human and what's on your mind. Because every person, this is cliche, it's been around 1 billion years. Everyone listens to the same radio station, WIIFM. What's in it for me? That's all I care about. So I 100% agree that if I would have a conversation with someone, the first thing is, let me tell you about our process and our model and why we're great. Well, I don't know that I care.
Yep.
Now here's the caveat to this. I also think if I was having a conversation, and I'll put this in insurance context, and again, we know that price and coverage is important, but we also know there's a greater depth. That's where you get into your risk management, trusted advisor stuff. If after a number of questions, here's my problem, here's my frustration, here's my challenges, and it comes back to things that don't fit our business model or where we really help and add value to clients, I would say, hey, Ryan, whoever that is, I really appreciate where you're coming from in our conversation. I don't know that we're a good fit moving forward.
Yeah.
Like not everyone has to fit my model.
I think that's a tremendous point. That what you just said there is a really tremendous point, is that, and just to pin that before we move on, I think it's very important, and I hope that I never come across this way, which I may, to say that I think everyone who reaches out to us, we should try to help, because there are most certainly going to be people who reach out to us cold, who just, as you've said, just, we are not going to be the best solution for them. And put we as in whoever you are. Like your agency is going to serve some people really well. Some people you can serve, but might not be the best for. And there are other people who are there absolutely better solutions. And we have to be able to say no to them. I just want to clear that up, because I have had people mention that. And I want to make sure people who are listening know that I'm not advocating for, you have to try to help everyone who reaches out. There are absolutely going to be people who, as Brent is saying very, very accurately and succinctly, that you shouldn't try to help because you're not the best solution for them, or they don't fit your model. So awesome. I love that point.
Yeah, it's just, I mean, we always say this too. Your current business model is perfectly designed for you to get the results you're currently getting. And just think about that for a second. Your current business model is perfectly designed for you to get the results you're getting. We always say, if you don't like your results, look at your model. So it comes back to that to a degree. And then of course there's questions and fine tunements after that. But I mean, our overall approach, and again, this is a very simplistic term over a larger issue, but like you do stuff right and you're asking relevant and right questions. And again, as you're qualifying, in my perfect world, you're helping to design a program. You're asking questions, design something that they're going to eventually buy from you. And it's going to look a little bit different for everybody. Because it comes back to like, what's your model?
Yeah.
I don't know what it is. And people say, well, I don't really have a business model. I go, yes, you do. Your results are your business model. Anyway,
yeah.
I'll leave it at that.
It's kind of like, what's that saying? Whether you believe you can or you can't, you're right. It's the same thing with your model. Whether you believe you have a model or you don't, you do. You do have a model.
And maybe this will go. I didn't watch the whole thing either, so I apologize. But I saw part of. I know there was some stuff you talked about. I think you've done some about like niche, and like
we're doing riches and the niches wrong. Yeah,
and part of this comes back. And again, I haven't taken forever to go. Okay, let me really unpack this. But my initial thought on this is depends on your business model.
Yeah.
Like, what do you want? And again, and I know there's subset, we could probably go down a rabbit hole here, but like, the idea of niches, it could be certain areas of niche. I've seen producers be really successful, and we believe this. I think the better word is specialize, and specialize is part of your model. Here's how we specialize. It may be different. And again, maybe it's just words.
Yeah, there could be some semantics in there. I get it. 100%.
But I think the bigger thing is knowing and owning your approach, and then from there being able to create the system that either allows people in or says, hey, it's not, and be good with that because we own who we are.
Yeah, that was another good one. I mean, I could have just like burped into the camera for a half hour with that title, and I knew the title would do well just because that's just like, that is like create conversation gold in that title. But the whole thought process behind that video was not that having a niche is wrong, which is, I found, I could tell where people stopped watching, and this is not saying anything about you, this is others, based on where they reached out to me. Because they reached out and they're like, rah, 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 rah. Then I was like, then you didn't watch the whole thing. Because essentially the case that I made, I was being inflammatory on purpose because because oftentimes if you can evoke emotion, people will have a greater chance of actually taking in the message, right? So purposefully evoking some emotion to the idea that I think the part of the conversation that we miss around niche marketing is mindset, right? We think, I write, cold storage warehouses. That's what I write. That's my specialty. I have this market, and that's tremendous. And I think it's phenomenal. And it is a great way to put revenue on the books and be a specialist and all that. But the part that we miss, in my opinion, is the mind. Just because someone owns a cold storage business does not mean that their mindset aligns with how you want to operate and the type of customer that you want to have. And what I was trying to convey is that I actually, particularly, again, always coming back to the idea that my specialty is inbound marketing. I actually believe that a better way to do inbound marketing is mindset oriented versus industry class oriented. Inbound, if you're cold calling, etc., different. But when it comes to inbound, I would rather have a broader set of industry classes, but with a mindset that mirrors my value structure and what I want to bring to them, versus I'm going to try to market to a specific class of business and then have them bounce off my agency because our mindsets don't align. That was where I was trying to go with that, if that makes sense.
No, it does. That it reminded me of something, and this is something we talked to our agencies about. This is something that we've talked internally at Sitkins about, because, and this is the idea, I think some of what you're talking about is the difference between demographics and psychographics.
Yes. Yeah. Yep.
Right. We've talked about that as an organization. Yes, we have some demographical trends of agencies we work with that we relate to really well. However, it's definitely more important with the psychographics and how do they view the world? How do they see things? How do they think? How do they approach issues and solutions? I could talk to a president of an agency that's 50 million in revenue and one that's 500,000 in revenue. And there are some significant differences, to say the least, but I could probably tell in 2 minutes, is this someone that we click and connect with and how they view and think about things? So I think there's great substance in what you're saying. I don't think this is, and maybe you're already saying this doesn't always have to be, goes back to even earlier conversations. Like, well, if not this, it's nothing. This is not an either or. It's probably a both hand.
Yes. Yeah, I think you're right.
So anyway.
Also, trial and error. Like, one of the things that I think people don't realize about all the crazy shit that I say is that I test all this stuff. Like, that's one of the things that a lot of people, when they disagree with what I'm saying, this is not theory. And if it is theory, I'll usually tell people that it's an untested thought that I'm having, right? Like and I'll try to make that very clear that this is something I'm kicking around in my head, but I haven't really had a chance to put this into the market yet.
Right.
But most of the stuff, and I know this is true for you, is that it's very much tested either through your own work, your own experience, or through clients, coaching clients, et cetera, that you've worked with. You've seen these things in market and watched the feedback because, I'll tell you, there are also certain classes of business, certain industry classes where mindset's not as important. Mm-hmm. It's just not, right? There's certain size businesses where mindset's not as important. There's certain lines of business where their mindset towards that line of business is literally the only thing that's going to sell the policy. A good example of that for me is cyber. If you market cyber hard and you are not taking into account psychographics, you will absolutely get dashed across the rocks. Your cost of acquisition will go through the roof, in my opinion. Because people right now, my belief based on the results that we had at Rogue Risk in particular with cyber was if you believed in it, we could sell you what you needed with a great company at a competitive price with the coverages that you needed. We could get it in place. If we were trying to force it on you or you thought it was BS or you thought you were too small, there was no way we were getting that policy in because you were just like, we don't need it. And if we did, they would cancel it the next year or be the first thing to go, or they'd constantly beat us up about it. And it's like, that's a policy that for whatever reason right now, it's just not in the consciousness of business owners, that even though every insurance professional in the world says this could be one of the most important policies you have, most consumers either believe it or they don't believe it. And it's just, and then the question becomes, for E&O purposes, you certainly want to offer it, but from a business opportunity standpoint, how much time do you want to waste, and how much leverage and trust, like if trust was a meter, how much of your trust meter do you want to waste pushing this policy on them versus maybe something else? And I think those are real things that we have to consider, when we're marketing certain products. There's just certain products like workers' comp. If I have an employee, I know I need it. You know what I mean? So it's like, there's a completely different mindset around it. Same thing, surprisingly, that I found with like E&O and professional. Like if people are in a class that even closely traditionally has, a professional characteristic to it, they kind of know they need it. And, maybe you got to massage them a little and talk about it. Marketing professionals tend to fight it a little more, et cetera. But for the most part, you can get them into a good policy. But man, cyber, they don't think they need it. Oh my God, they'll take out a knife and fight you. If you're selling it. Now I hear you. And this is something my mom said when I was little and I didn't get, those convinced against their will are of the same opinion still. Yeah, exactly.
And right, we kind of know that. But I mean, to your point, Ryan, I'm not going to beat you over the head with it a million times because it's not going to change how you view it, right? It's your viewpoint. And I think the other thing you said there that I think would be interesting, I found very interesting about I've done it, it's practical, right? And some things that aren't. But and there's an evolution to that. There are a lot of things that I go, I think this would work. And then you do it and you go, okay, this part works, this part doesn't. Yeah. Right. And I go back to what works and you modify and fine tune that, right? And you continue to go deeper in this. And then this comes back to something I heard from a mentor a few years back. He's like, Brent, you can't improve a result till you get one.
Yeah. Did anyone tell you have the best ditties? You got all the best ditties. The radio station one and the sell the next your ditties. You got the best little one-liners. I love it.
Maybe it's the world of Twitter X. You got to talk to something. Yeah. No, I don't know. I talk a lot, right? It's one of the things.
No, I love it. That was not a knock. That was an envious comment. I love it. I think it helped. Honestly, I think it is a sign of a good communicator, because where I take 10,000 words to say something that should be said in 7, you're able to say it in that seems a lot easier to remember these things. So no, that was a compliment. I meant that as a compliment.
I know, and I'm just giving you. Well, but it's one of those, and it is this is. I'm going off of it because you said communication, so I'm going to go there because this is what I live. It's I heard this from John Maxwell. I love it. Keep the cookies on the bottom shelf. And people will be like, well, that's really simple. It is, and guess what? It's memorable and it's actionable. I don't the analogy is, and maybe you've had this, I've had this. I tell this to audiences, or if I'm working with a group, have you ever had a teacher, a professor, that their goal when they teach and talk to you is to show you how smart they are? Yes. And how connected were you with them? Not at all, right? Or have someone else say, I really want to be with you, right? And in communication, it's everything from I'm not here and you're not here. We're here together. We're having a real authentic conversation together. Yes, I may be the expert in a certain area, right? Or whatever it is as a teacher, but my biggest goal is to transfer it to you. And no matter how much I have here, if this doesn't go to you, it's worthless. And I think this is true for insurance producers and agencies as well, right? This idea of the technobabble, all of this. And you got to know that. But if someone doesn't relate to it, if they don't understand it, if there's not some form of even the rapport and the relationship built into it, there's a lot of different ways of that. It's just a bunch of stuff that makes you feel good and smart that does nothing. So can I
ask you a question about something you just said?
Yeah.
The technobabble piece, you said, you have to know that. Do you actually have to know it? And that's an honest question. I guess, and let me frame it just a little bit differently. Is how much do you actually need to know to be a valuable producer not just to your agency, but to the client that you're serving as well. Like, how much do you actually need to know? You and I both, and we used to talk about this all the time back in the day, you and I both went very deep on coverage. We could talk about coverage, CIC, reading, man. Okay. So I've been there, done that. And I know it has value. But I've always asked myself, is it better to be someone who is very good at understanding your customer, communicating with them, relating to them, getting to their problem? And maybe if you had to be a little lighter on coverage and et cetera, or is it better to be that hardcore, man, I can ferret out every potential pitfall in this policy, et cetera? Like, where do you fall in there if you had to pick?
So it's a really good question. And I don't want to go, it depends, but man, it really does. Cause I mean, I've seen producers on the side of this. I will say this though, with pretty clear conviction, some of the most successful producers, they certainly understand the concepts, right? Cause you got to understand enough to ask really good questions.
Yeah.
But like, as far as going like really deep, it goes back to what we said earlier. Most of these, and some of these, with these agencies, they've got people around them. That's their unique ability. It's what they love to do. Let me take this and really start diagnosing stuff, right? And of course, you've got underwriters and things that, they said that's what they do. But what I'm really good at is learning the most about you, right? Being able to ask the right questions at the right time, to be 100% present in the conversation. And yes, it's relatability. Yes, it's rapport. All those things. Those things are crucial. Yeah. I do think that, and again, I'm not just throwing out numbers, but I think of producers who are 2, 3, 4 million in their own personal book of commission, not premium. And I asked them a lot of questions because I'm curious, like, how'd you do that? That's pretty impressive. And it was interesting. Like, one of my guys been with us for a long time and super smart and funny. He's got a lot of just great guy. But I sat there in a room with him and he was up to about a $4 million book of business. And I said, what's the one thing? It's never one thing. What's the one? He goes, from very early on stage, I've always considered myself a business consultant or advisor and never an insurance agent.
Yeah.
Like, all I think to myself is, how can I help you move your business forward? And it actually comes back to kind of what you said earlier a little bit, right? Like, what they say may not be where you're at or where you want to go, but I'm going to start with it. Like, my one goal is, how can I help you move your business forward? At some point, we may get to some of the stuff that'll do that. And by the way, he has a team that helps him with most of it.
Yeah.
So long-winded answer.
No, I think you're right, dude. I think that when we gave up or was taken away from us, however you want to position it, the idea of being frontline underwriters, we can pretend to be frontline underwriters. And really, I think we should take a mindset of being a frontline underwriter to a certain extent. I do advocate for that. So I'm not trying to poo-poo it, but technically we're really not anymore. In most cases, there are some unique contract situations with certain carriers where I'm sure that's the case. But in most scenarios, we are no longer the frontline underwriters that we were 30 or 40 years ago. When that dynamic of our position was, we'll just say diminished, maybe not removed, but diminished, I believe we went from being true underwriters and needing to know, how far a step could be from the ground before it needed a handrail, and what would happen if this overhang wasn't, whatever, those dynamics, to now we can lean on our underwriters or subject matter experts inside a larger agency if we have them, in exchange for what you just described, which I think is absolutely the more productive way to be, not just from a business revenue standpoint, but from a value to client standpoint, which is that consultant, that advisor. I don't love the term trusted advisor, but I do think a consultative approach, a relationship-based approach is absolutely the way to go. And it's why I advocate on inbound, because you're not going to have as much frontline relationship building, right? That, sure. And our process is really, what we've done with our inbound process is kind of flipped it on its head, is we've made information gathering last instead of first, which is the way 95% of the agencies do it. And the whole concept is what you just described, is how do we become a business consultant for you? And if your problem is workers' comp today, even if we write and we write commercial auto and cyber and all these other things, if your problem is comp, I want to solve that problem for you today so you don't make another phone call or have to make another phone call, right? And I think then extended to whether you're selling on BORs or you're doing, prospecting or you're a networker or whatever you are, I think you defined a much more productive way for us to write business is that consultative relationship building approach. And however it works for you, because I don't think over-indexing on the nerdiness of our industry pays the dividends that it once did. That doesn't mean it's valueless. It doesn't mean you shouldn't do it. And I'm not advocating people don't get designations or whatever. I had my CIC, and to be honest with you, I wish I still did. And I'm that's very honest. But I just don't know that it pays the same dividends that it did in the past.
Well, as you're saying that, it came to my mind. Again, this seems like communication 101, but it comes back to are we asking enough questions? As simple as that is. You go, I'm looking for work comp. What most people, great, good. We've got so much great work comp stuff. Let me tell you about it.
Yeah.
Versus just taking a step back and go, well, tell me more about that. And just getting to know, right? I'm not saying go forever, but just ask certainly you can do some of these things online as well. But I think that the challenge of this, and I tell some of the story, you in our programs, you need to be able to know your stuff. You should be a professional and learn and be educated and all those things. But I think what gets missed is there's a difference between insurance knowledge and business acumen. And they're both important. But what happens sometimes, and maybe it's not so much one or the other, but obviously the more knowledge you get in insurance, the more that you think there's a level of assumption and arrogance that can happen many times in conversations, right? I know more than you. I don't say that, but I know more than you. So here's what you need to do. Versus really understanding the fact that it's not about what I know. It's about your impact. There's a difference. So taking the more that you know, what typically happens is now I know more so I can tell you more. The great ones say, now I know more so I can ask even better questions.
Yeah, I love that.
That's a big nuance I think people miss. Because it's easy when you know more, because you do. I learned this thing. I went to a cyber class. Let me tell you all about cyber.
Yeah.
Versus what the thinking should be is, I went to the cyber class. I've now unpacked 2 or 3 different ways of thinking or questions that I should be asking that I haven't.
Yeah. It's funny. I was talking to a coaching client the other day, and I may even shared some of this on the podcast before. If I have, I apologize to the listeners. But we were talking through this process of questioning inbound leads, because I do think my experience has been that questioning a cold inbound lead, meaning a lead that has reached out to you that you don't know, versus someone you've prospect or networked or been referred is just different. And I said, are you asking them why they didn't call their current agent? So the idea was, if someone calls for workers' comp, they most likely already have a BOP with a current agent or whatever. And if someone calls and they're asking for a policy that usually isn't the first policy that someone buys, commercial auto, comp, et cetera, then I'll usually follow up with, awesome, we would love to work with you. Just how come you didn't reach out to your current agent? And they're like, you would ask them that? Why would you, and it was funny, they weren't, the idea was more like they didn't feel like they were allowed to ask them that question. Yeah. And I was like, we want to ask we want to get to know them, right? They could tell you a whole bunch of things. They could tell you that their current agent, they can't stand their current agent. Mm-hmm. And that even though today they just need comp from you, really, they can't wait to get everything away. They could tell you that they went direct and they're unhappy with directs. They don't have a great relationship. And again, they don't want to solve that problem today, but they want to get this from someone they can work with. They could tell you that their current agent is their brother and they're really just trying to get a quote to hold him accountable so they can give him shit at Thanksgiving. And and again, it goes back to the more confident we are in what we know about policies, the more confident we are in ourselves as professionals, the better questions we can ask. And those questions, if asked, and I think, this comes with experience and training, the more we can ask open-ended questions and then turn our ears on, right? Instead of question, what's the next question I need to ask? It's question, open your ears and listen to what they actually say, because you could get all the answers you need, and that's what we try to teach is like ask open-ended questions and they will literally give you the keys to the sale. But it just, I think a lot of that comes from just confidence. If we're not thinking about, oh my God, what's the next question I have to ask to get the right information to quote? Because we own that, right? We've gone deep enough to own that. Then we can allow ourselves to ask some of these more open-ended questions that we get real answers from, if that makes sense. Does that make sense to you?
No, I mean, listen, I'm 100% on board with opening the question. We teach whole sessions around it. People just think they're naturally good at it, but they're not. I mean, listen, because you'll get, I know, but like, do you really work on it? Because there is a skill and an art to it, and the best are really good at it. Like, I gave you a really simple, quick analogy, and I say this in our programs all the time. If you go to a restaurant with a server, right, taking your order and that whole deal, right? At the end of most meals, the good ones say something like this: "Mr. Hanley, how was everything today?" Which you're going to say, good, great, fine. They checked a box. They asked a question. They did what they were supposed to do, right? One nuance to this is coming over and going, "Mr. Hanley, hope you had a great dining experience tonight. What's the one thing that I or we could have done to make this even a better experience for you?"
Yeah.
Like, you have to answer that question now. You have just, like, the human brain's like, oh, well, I guess the rolls were kind of hard. Oh, interesting. Like you've got more information than that. And just imagine compounding those things. Like, it's fine tuned and it isn't that complicated, but most people don't do it because they overlook it.
Yeah. There's a question that I taught every one of our producers at Rogue that they hated to ask. I don't know why, but they hated. And when they started to pick it up and started to become more comfortable with it, I would inevitably get a Slack message like, "Wow, screw you. This actually does work," or whatever, grumble. Sure. Which was simply, before you hang up the phone, no matter what was going on, before you hang up the phone, you ask them, what would make your relationship with us a success? Just that simple question. Just, hey, I would just say, hey, before I let you go, I just like to ask this because, it just lets me, I want to do what's right by you. What would make this relationship a success for you? And some people would have nothing to say. Some people would say, hey, just do what I told you, whatever they said, hey, I just need this. And some people go, man, I just want to be able to like text you and have you get back to me. And you just literally got the keys, the tumbler key to everything that you need you could shovel a bag of insurance shit onto them. And if you at the end can go, but you know what? You can text me anytime at this number and I'll make sure I get back to you with an answer. They're going to buy from you. And it's like simple things like that you just can build into your process and make part of your routine that I believe change the entire experience for people. Because not only, and I know we're at the number I want to finish up here, but what I believe open-ended questions do personally, and I know you teach them. I know you're on board. It was kind of like a softball I wanted you to knock out of the park there. But I believe that when you ask open-ended questions, and this goes for your spouse, your kids, your friends, anybody in your life, when you ask open-ended questions, no matter what the question is, people immediately feel heard. They immediately feel like you care and they feel heard, because now they're like, I'm not being forced to answer yes, no, or 1, 2, 3, or tomorrow or whatever. I get to tell you what's going on in my brain. And we have so few opportunities to honestly share what's going on with us that when someone asks us that kind of question, we're like, I love this guy. I love her. She's the best. You know what I mean? Because she, and all you did was ask a simple open-ended question. I just think it's the most powerful tool we have in our tool belt.
Yeah. And again, I'll respect your time here. I'll just say just a couple thoughts on.
Yeah, please.
I do believe this. I say this more with conviction than I ever have. I believe in today's noisy, distracted world, and we all know it, right? We all got one of these everywhere. The greatest gift you can give another human being is your complete time and attention.
Yeah.
Like above anything else. For 30 seconds, 3 minutes, or 30 minutes, whatever it is, like I am with you, because I'll tell you, that is really not done in today's world.
Yeah.
And like, this goes back to Dale Carnegie, right? So this isn't, but this idea of like when he said, to be interesting, be interested.
100%.
Like, don't complicate it. Like, and I'm laughing because the opening questions, like these are things you said with your spouse or whatever. Like I play these games with my kids. I have my oldest daughter's not a teenager. She's 20 now. I basically 3 teenage daughters. They don't like to say much. But when you actually get smart, and again, I don't always do this, but like ask little nuanced questions. It's funny just to see how the human brain works. Like most people at the end of the day, how was your day at school? Fine. Oh, good, fine. I don't know. Fine. And like, I know this is so stupid, but I've done stuff where I've been like, you just sit there, I look at him and I go, what's the weirdest thing you smelled today?
Yeah. Dude, I love that. I asked my kid the other day, I go, what's the stupidest thing your teacher said today? And then, it was like, it's so good. What was the weirdest thing they smelled?
I'm trying to remember something in the lunch or whatever. But what's funny is like they look at, that's a pretty weird question, right? And they'll look at like you're an idiot, right? Which they do a lot anyway, because I'm their dad and they're teenage daughters. But they'll look at me, they'll be like, and then they kind of stop. But again, the human brain's going, they're starting to think and they go, and I don't remember exactly what it was, but it was like, yeah, there was something weird that burned in the cafeteria today. It was awful. I'm like, oh, tell me about that. Well, I think it was popcorn. And like all of a sudden you'll be like, I just started a conversation that never would have existed.
You're talking to dad. Gotcha.
Now they kind of got me figured out now. But anyway.
That's funny. I think, I love it. Very last thing, and then we'll go. We'll be respectful of everyone's time. I like to try to keep it to an hour, but, so I'm currently seeing a woman, but at the beginning of seeing her, and this is not the first time, that I've heard this, but like, went out on a date with her, the first date, whatever. We have a great time. I thought we had a great time. Okay. We go to see each other again and we were dinner and, or she made me dinner. That's how I knew she was a winner. The second dinner was, she actually made me dinner. I was like, this is awesome. Yeah, it's a very good start. But, she said, you did something really funny during our first date. And I was like, oh my God, what did I do? Like weird facial expression or said something. If you've listened to the show long enough, I probably don't even know what it was that I did or said. And she goes, you didn't look at your phone. And I go, what do you mean? And she's like, you didn't look at your phone when we were at dinner. And I was go, well, I was with you. Why would I look at my phone? And she's like, yeah, that's not the way most dates go. And I'm like, what do you mean? She's like, guys will be scrolling through their phone during dinner. And I'm like, that's fucking crazy. Because one, she's hot as shit. And I couldn't imagine paying attention to her. And she's a very funny and interesting person. And I really enjoy her. But like, I was like, is that really what people do? Like they're on, and it just went back to your point of like, to be interesting, be interested. Like, I would like to believe that when I'm on these with you, you feel like you have 100% of my attention. And I'd like to believe that I do that. I don't think I'm the best at it always, but I'd like to believe that I do. I couldn't believe, and to her, it was such a positive quality in me as a potential partner that like we could go 2 hours during dinner and I could not look at my phone, which I didn't. Right. And which I would never even think of doing, but like, unless something was up or whatever. But like then I would like excuse myself. I'd say, hey, me, my kids or whatever. But like it was just wild. That was something that she pulled out. To your point, interesting is being interested is like I didn't look at my phone during our first date. And I'm like, if that's the fucking bar, I'm gonna dominate the dating game because that's crazy. No, I'm crazy.
No, it's an interesting story. It really is to think about the world we live in and we talk about it, but it's like, and by the way, I suck at it. Like, I have to really be aware and cognizant of it because I've got adult onset ADD with phones and this and stuff. And like, and again, I got 5 kids, like, and like, just to be like, nope, I'm here. Is hard for me, but when I'm there, I love it. And of course the conversation is at a whole different level.
Completely
and
agree.
And maybe it's 30 seconds. It's amazing. Even 30 seconds. Like, hey, for 30 seconds, like I'm totally with you because we live in a world of not that.
The last thing I'll say, and then let's go, is that don't give yourself a hard time if you feel distracted in a conversation. I found that even moments of pure attention in the course of a longer conversation can generate similar feelings than like, I gave this woman, say, 2 hours of my full attention, right? But I think, let's say there was something else going on in my life and I had moments where I did need to break from that. I think if in the moments that you're there, don't give yourself too hard a time. Like it is very difficult today. If you read, it was difficult for people back in the 20s, right?
Yeah.
In the 1800s, in the 70s. This is not something people, I think today we have more distractions, but I do think this is something that people have dealt with their entire, for the human history. But I think as often as you can, try to be fully present and things will go well. And it's certainly in sales scenarios, if you can just be present 100% in a sales scenario, you will watch your conversion rate, the quality of the relationships, your close ratio go up. Brent, I love our conversations, man. Appreciate the hell out of you. Obviously, I respect and believe everything that you're coaching and teaching. And everyone who works with the Sickens Group is obviously blessed to be able to work with you. Where can people connect with you more, learn more about what you do and your programs and all that kind of stuff?
Yeah, our organization, just go to our website. We've just revamped it so it looks all clean and crisp, hopefully simplify. But sitkins.com. And then as far as for me, the best place, I'm a main LinkedIn guy. I know some people like it, some people don't. Go to LinkedIn and connect with me, put stuff out there, and have some conversations there as well. So it was great. It was great catching up with you. I know it's been a while.
Yeah, awesome, bro. Appreciate the hell out of you. Wish you nothing but the best.
Take care.
I'm going to Shaboom!